Good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to Face to Face. My name is Barry, and I'll be your host today from now on. And now we're going to talk about media. Media, it has been a great platform for us. It gives us a great access on information, but sometimes we can hear some allegations regarding the bias in media. For example, media company A support this candidate, or for example, another magazine don't give you some adequate picture of something because of the censorship. So today we're going to have a wonderful guest, which is Kartika, to talk about this. Hi Kartika.
Hello, Betty.
How are you?
I'm fine. How about you?
It's great. So tell us a bit about yourself so the viewers know.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kartika. I'm Venusian 2018, and I'm majoring international relations.
Thank you. So probably the viewers feel that's not enough of you. So tell us more about yourself.
Well, right now I'm focusing on media as my streaming in international relations, and I have been active in organizations in Venus such as English Club, in which I learn newscasting, and also BIRDS, Venus International Relations Dialectic Society, in which I learn a lot also about media, public speaking, and I will have to keep updated with events from the news.
Okay, so first, why international relationship?
The reason why I choose IR is because I see it's very interesting to see how we learn about countries, how they build good relations each other, and how they conduct diplomacy, and how they did negotiations. I think that's very interesting, and that's what we learn in international relations. And not just that, we also learn about analytical skill, in which we read a lot of journals, and then we have to be critical about it.
That's really great. And also, how it shapes you right now compared to the time before you joined international relations in college and right now that you joined. Do you have new orientation, especially about media?
It changed me a lot, Bear, because before I joined media streaming, I almost did not know about media propaganda, about the bias in media, almost about everything in media. But now, since I joined media as my streaming, I know a lot of things, and I learned that, wow, media can be influenced by so many factors. The media owners themselves, or the nature in media, and other actors can play in media. It's very interesting.
Okay, so why media? Like, we know that international relations has so many streamings such as diplomacy, security, but why you choose media as your streaming?
I think it's because I would like to improve my analytical skill by joining media as my streaming. I will read a lot of journals, and I would have to be critical about it. And since I saw many news in the newspaper or in television, right now I can be critical and I can criticize them. Since I joined media as my streaming, but perhaps if I join other streaming, I might not be able to do that.
Okay, so is there anything that currently you see that needs to be critiqued regarding our media?
In our media in Indonesia, let's first start from mass media.
Okay.
I think media did a really good job there in educating our society. They give us lots of information, and I think it makes our citizen very educated. However, we cannot disregard the fact that media themselves can be biased. They can show propaganda. You can see from the presidential election in 2014, you can see how certain media can give different poll result, and I see that as a bias in media, and I saw that, wow, it's something. It's a problem in our country, but I cannot despite the fact that media is also educating our society. But well, if you would like to talk about social media, wow, we can see how
it's really big. Huh?
Yeah, it's really big. The widespread of information. It's the citizen journalism where everyone now can tweet, they can post everything, they can express themselves through social media. It's very interesting, despite the positive and perhaps negative impact that we might see.
Okay, so how can you do you see different risks between mass media and social media?
Well, both of them gave both positive and negative impact. They can shape our public opinion.
What is the significant differences that you see?
The significant differences between
The-
mass
be-
media
yes, between
and,
those media.
between these medias. Well, for mass media, it's the decision from the media themselves whether they would like to cover an issues and whether the government will restrict a certain issues to be covered. However, when it comes to social media, it's the freedom of the citizen to choose whether they would like to express themselves in media through all of the various social media that we have today. Facebook, YouTube, they can just upload everything they wanted. So that's the difference from the media and from the citizen themselves.
Okay. Do you, which one is the most powerful to express our media from your point of view? The mass media or the social media? Because as we know that social media has a lot of people, but again, mass media, they are backed up by government. Okay, let's say they are independent, but somehow they are backed up by government and they give more exposure to our surroundings. How do you see that?
I think the most powerful one would be the social media because it's the citizen that drives these social media. Even issues that covered in social media can be covered again in mass media. Therefore, I think social media would be the most important ones.
Well, but most of the policymaker doesn't have social media, while in the mass media, they like go straight to the mind of the policymaker because they are afraid of how will my citizen look at me if I'm portrayed as a bad guy in the mass media. While social media, well, we know that some policymaker has it, but not all of them like that. How do you see that?
Well, I see that it's true. Some of our policymakers, even our president, have
Yes.
Twitter, right? They can influence our citizen through that, but citizens can criticize them through social media.
Okay.
However, they can still use the mass media, as you can see, to show goodwill, to show good information about themselves, about the governments, and things like that. However, it's the decision from the media companies themselves whether they would like to give a coverage about good governments like that, or they would like to give coverage about critics from the public. So it's the decision from the media companies.
Okay, so the last one. How do you think, what do you think things affecting the media companies to show certain events or not, or the news? What do you think is the what
Factors
affects
influencing.
the factors? Yes.
I think the factors influencing these media companies would be first the media owners themselves. Where you can see a lot of media owners in Indonesia are owned by political actors. Yeah, that can influence the coverage.
Okay.
And then the media in nature themselves. Media is still a business, and we cannot disregard the fact that they will go for profit, right? And I think those two factors are the two most important ones to influence whether media will cover these issues or not.
What else do you think, like their needs, their interests?
Yeah, their interest would go with that two factors actually, and whether the media support certain actors or media would like to marginalize certain actors, that would influence them.
Okay, thank you. We don't want to spoil too much to the viewers, so stay tuned on Face to Face, and we'll be back with more information about media. See you. Good afternoon, viewers, and welcome back with me, Barry, in Face to Face. And we're going to talk more about media. And now we're here with Kartika again. Hi, Kartika. Welcome back. Welcome back. So, we've been talking about how's the current situation that we have here, that sometimes the interest of some candidates can affect the media approach to the public. And now, we want to know, like, from your point of view, what is the idealistic vision from you about media? What is the ideal media for you?
If you would like to ask the ideal media, then I would have to argue that the ideal media owners should not be political players.
Okay, why
However,
is it?
yeah, because they will have a certain agenda, since they are players in politics and they're also owners of media. They will have agenda that will influence the perspective of the public. They perhaps would like the agenda to shape the opinion of the public, and I think that would not be the ideal condition. However, since that is almost impossible to achieve, then I would have to say that the ideal media should have journalists and reporters with good vision and of course principle of neutrality and objectivity, in which they have the principle that they will have to tell the news as the way it is. They will not marginalize certain groups. They would not cut or perhaps do not want to show a certain events just because of a certain agenda or just because it contradicts with their interests. Therefore, I have to say the ideal media would be media with objectivity and neutrality.
Okay, as we can see now, government plays a big role in media, that they make you do this and you cannot do this. And as we can see, there are some media company which consists of independent journalists, such as The Guardian or another media company. And do you think their independence can be affected by government? Or we can also see the Panama paper, which is leaked by the various journalists from around the world. Their independence, their idealistic view of media, do you think it can be affected by government?
I think even though that they are independent, they still can be influenced by government, because it's actually the relation between independent companies. They can still have a good relation with government. They can have certain perspective that go in line with government, or perhaps they could also be contradiction, but it doesn't necessarily mean that when they contradicts with the government, it means that they have a negative or bad policy. Well, I think even though that they are independent, they still can be influenced by government. It's the decision of the media companies whether they would like to go with a government or not.
Okay, let's say you have a media company, an independent media company, and you want to bring this ideal view of perfect media where you don't do biased thing and you don't go on one side. But again, there goes the government who will restrict you from showing certain events. How do you deal with that?
Well, I would have to say again, a perfect media is almost impossible. Because media in nature is always influenced by so many factors. Even the media in nature themselves are not neutral. Therefore, it is almost impossible to pursue for a very objective, a very neutral media. For example, the case in China, we see that their government restricted the internet. They banned certain websites, they banned certain social media. They don't have Facebook, they cannot see YouTube in China. Well, I think it's the decision from the government, and we cannot really criticize that. However, the citizens themselves are like, they really would like to go for the government. Well, that's the situation. Sometimes even citizen journalism can be restricted by government, because well, the political system in there is not really democracy, right? Therefore, it could be based on the decision from the government also.
Okay. Do you agree that banning some website, or let's say in China, they ban Facebook, they ban YouTube, and they ban Google? I mean, they have their own Google and their own online store. I mean, it's really restricted there. Do you think it's the violation of freedom of expression right? Which is really crucial to us.
Yeah, I think so. However, again, well, the citizen cannot do so much. However, because the political system themselves, if I saw this from the perspective of democracy, of course, I would have to say that this is definitely a violation towards freedom of expression. However, since their country is not really democratic, the political system is not really democratic, therefore, we cannot argue too much on that.
Okay, now, Indonesia, let's look at our own lovely country. how can you describe the current situation here? Because as we can see, I used to buy National Geographic magazine in Indonesia version, and I compare it to the international version of National Geographic. They were covering this indigenous tribe in some place in America, if I'm not mistaken, and in the international version, they show the tribe in the way they live, like their natural way of life, which is the woman will be topless, and they take a picture of it without a problem. But again, when I buy the Indonesian version, I don't see that picture. I mean, let's say like this. People in Indonesia need to know, they need to open their mind. They said they want to go global, go international, but it happens. How can you?
I agree with you, Bear, because the condition is that our government has been more active in doing a lot of censorship. Even if you see in Miss Indonesia television, you see that they even censor some part of the Miss Indonesian. You saw that they are wearing kabaya, which is our traditional clothing,
Yes.
and we are very proud of that. But they censor that. In my personal opinion, I disagree with that. Well, I agree if government would like to ban certain websites that contain pornography perhaps or violations. However, I see that this is exaggerating, and I also agree with you that the case of National Geographic, people need to see the culture. They
Yes,
need to open
exactly.
their mind to view the world. I mean, like, if you see the culture in Papua, they also
Yes, exactly.
they also topless, right? But sometimes our government censor that also. But I think that our young generation need to see that this is our culture. Indonesia has various cultures, and Papua, this is their culture. This is how they
Exactly.
live. This is the lifestyle. I think our government needs to be more open on that. However, I agree if they would like to ban websites that contain pornography and violence. However, when it comes to cultures, I think they not supposed to do that.
Okay. Do you think that censorship affects our young generation of how they see some parts of body, let's say like that? Do you think it shapes their mind of objectifying it, perhaps, or?
I think that when government are exaggerating about
Censorship.
censorship, this could also lead problems to our young generation because they will get even more curious to find out, right?
Yes.
And I think this is more dangerous. Therefore, I think that the government needs to be a little bit more open when it comes to that, especially in the Miss Indonesian case. I think that's not supposed to happen because it caused our young generation to even become more curious, and they probably will try to find out by using other websites.
Okay. How powerful is government do you see in our country in controlling media?
I think that the government in Indonesia, I think they give freedom to the media, and I saw that our media companies are quite independent in nature. I don't see that government is controlling. However, I saw that media themselves would like to go in line with government, and media sometimes give support to certain actors, which we would like to say that as a media darling. For example, you can see our president, Mr. Jokowi. I really love his works, and I must say that he is a media darling. In the press, before he become president, we can see how many medias are like covering about him so much, and I think this actually raised his electability. I think he's a media darling, and we can see how if media supports a certain actor, then the public would also support this actor. I think that's amazing. That's the power of how media can influence our mind and influence our decisions. However, I must say that media darling can have both positive and negative impact. It depends on the actor themselves whether this actor is really a good leader and have a good track record. But in the case of Jokowi, I think it's not a big of problem.
Okay. Do you think it's unfair because they support a candidate, like they support a candidate, but again, what they have to do is a publication. I mean, that's what I see. What do you think? Isn't that unfair?
I would have to say that this is unneutral, just like what you say. Well, this is unfair because they support a certain one. They make this actor as a media darling. However, they could be marginalizing the other actor. I agree with you, Barry, that this is unfair. However, I must again say that it's the decision from the media companies themselves whether they would like to be neutral when it comes to covering a certain actors. And I hope that this would not happen again, of course, in the future.
Okay. If this happen again, how can you see the future of our media? Like, if this keep happening, what can you envision towards our media if this keep happening?
Well, if this keeps going on, then of course it will bring certain negative impacts towards our citizen, in which they will probably start not to trusting the media so much because they see how the media are doing a lot of propaganda, are being biased, are supporting certain actors, and they can see perhaps two different television channels would have different actors to support, and this will decrease the trust from the citizen if this continues to happen, but I hope not in the future.
Okay, that's really great, and we're going to continue that. So stay tuned on Face to Face, and we're going to talk more about media, the media bias, which is really important in media. So stay tuned on Face to Face with me, Barry. Welcome back to Face viewers, and now we'll talk about the bias in media, which is really important to us because it affects how we see the media itself. And now we're going back to Kartika. Hi Kartika. So, we've talked about how in government it's sometimes biased because the media go in line with the government. Other than that, do you see anything like bias like that?
Bias media. Let's see in the U.S. case.
Okay.
In U.S., when they in the Iraq War in 2003, we can see how U.S. media are really supporting their government. You can see that their coverage are all about discriminating the U.S. Enemy, which is Iraq and Iran at the time, and they are showing how they really hate these enemies, and they are saying that these countries are dictators, these countries are developing nuclear weapons, and they're at the same time they are showing the goodwill of U.S. government to fight terrorism, to stabilize Iraq at the time. We can see that this is the condition of biased media, and I think that the situation influencing this condition is that nationalism. Because although you stated before that media could be independent, but again, they can support the government. Why? Because they have nationalism within them. They understand that they are US media or perhaps they are Indonesian media. Then they will have to support their government. This nationalism is actually a certain theory in IR.
How is it?
When it comes to crisis, journalists can shift their identity towards nationalism. So they have dual identity in which they will shift when it comes to crisis. They will support their country. It's a patriotism.
Journalists and nationalists? Like
journalists can support nationalism when it comes to crisis, when their country are in crisis, and we call that as constant war of independence. That's the concept in which journalists will support their government when it comes to crisis, and I think that will happen to Indonesian also when, for example, we have forest fires happening in Indonesia. We know that this is the fault of our country, of course, because we have forest fires in Kalimantan and then Sumatra, but countries like Singapore and Malaysia will criticize it, right? However, our media would support Indonesian government at all costs because, again, nationalism we can see, and this would actually cause the media to become biased sometimes.
Oh, okay. This bias, Is it bad or good? Is there any bias which brings good or any bias which brings negative impact?
Bias, well, I will have to say bias will always give negative impacts towards the citizen.
Why?
Because the citizen can never get the truth. They
Okay.
can never find which is the right one, which is the actual events that they should be supporting, how they can really view the world if the media, which are the source of information, are biased, right? So I will have to say that biased media is negative. Well, for you say, is there any bias that brings positive impact? Perhaps, let's see in the U.S. case.
Okay.
Well, biased media can give positive impact for our government, for their government when it comes to U.S. because public can support their government, which means less riot, less dissident. There is no demonstration and things like that. Of course, a more stable country. However, again, citizens are not provided with accurate and balanced information, which is the loss for the public.
How about in social media? Do you see any bias because of the government in line in social media?
In social media, I see that the actors most influencing the social media is actually the citizen. I didn't see that government are influencing our social media so much. But they can still use it because some of our political actors and even our president have social media, but that's not really influencing because citizen plays the most important part and major role in social media. However, when it comes to media, I think it's not bias. Bias is not the case. I think propaganda would be
How
the
is
case.
it?
Sometimes, since people are very free to express themselves through social media, they sometimes can post things that are not really important, inappropriate. You can see the news recently that a young man climbed up to the Sukarno statue and take a selfie, something like that, and post it to social media. We can see that they probably think that social media can cause them to become famous, right? Because this can go viral, can be shared and liked by so many people. This can make them go viral. However, again, it brings negative impact towards our citizen, right? Well, a lot of educated people will saw that and understand that this should not be happening. However, again, we can see that media sometimes can bring certain impacts that cause people to become like they go for famous, they would like to go for wealth and things like that and just do anything and post it. And sometimes the information are not really useful.
Okay, so let's say we give some policies to the social media that we ban some content. And then if you look at the general overview about freedom in media, it violates the freedom of expression. So there's like this contradiction because if we ban this, it's violation of their right. If it not ban this, it brings the negative impact, like the photo with Sukarno statue you said. How do you see that?
Well, I would have to say that government must not ban this information to go out, despite the fact that this information might be influencing our society negatively, but still government must not ban this information because it will be on the citizen themselves to look at it, and they will have to decide whether this information should influence them or not. So we are hoping for our Indonesian people to become more educated and more independent when it comes to choosing what information that they should consume, what information that they should receive, that they should share. Therefore, government of Indonesia should not ban this information to go out. However, again, when it comes to information that contains pornography and violence, I would have to support our government. However, when it comes to, well, information about the citizen in social media, I don't think government should ban that.
Okay. You'll ban site that contains violence and pornography. I mean, okay, it brings bad influence, but you're violating the right as well. Like, it's just the same like you are banning. It's just the same like you're letting these people to post a picture which is inappropriate in front of the statue of the hero, let's say. And how do you think? Don't you think that banning certain website, okay, it contains violation. Also, uh, violating the freedom of expression as well?
Well, again, when it comes to violating the freedom of expression, I must say that every country has their own rules and regulations.
Okay.
And in this case, violations and pornography is something that is not in line with our values as Indonesian people. Therefore, websites that contain these violence and pornography, I will have to support the government to ban them, because these will bring negative impacts towards our citizen, in which probably increase the criminal rate in our country. Therefore, this kind of thing would have to be limited and restricted by the government. But again, when it comes to culture, we should not ban these kind of information to go on public. And again, as you stated before, the case where a young man climbed to the statue of Sukarno and posed that, I think this should not be banned. Why? Because our citizen, I believe that our citizens are educated enough to see that this action is inappropriate, and they even can criticize that. So government of Indonesia should not too much concern on this issue. However, they still would have to, again, restrict certain websites that contain violence, because it doesn't go in line with the values in our Indonesia.
Okay, how about certain information that used to be banned? Let's say some historical facts or some historical figures who is not included in the formal history lesson, that right now they're being brought up, and some people think that you're bringing this propaganda again because it's not in line with our value. How do you see that? Let's say propaganda A used to be really bad for our country, that you cannot bring it up again. How do you see that?
Well, I understand your point of view. Again, some historical evidence that is being restricted by the government. I again would have to say that I disagree on that. Yeah, I think government should be more open. However, again, I understand the concern of government that they're afraid that these evidence and historical things would influence our young generation now and cause them to act in an anarchical way, which is dangerous for our country. I understand that. I think this is also one form of limitation and violation to the freedom of expression. I think our citizens deserve to find the facts. They deserve to know the truth. Well, again, when it comes to trying to create a stable country, that's what our government and even other government in the world do. Therefore, I would have to leave that kind of decision to the government, really, because even though that I support that Indonesian people should get the truth, Indonesian people should find the facts. However, we cannot disregard the fact that government have their own agenda, of course, to create a stable country, and they don't want that these information probably will create riots in our country and things like that.
Okay, so there is this problem about how to keep stable country, how to keep the flow of information transparent. But from what you said, apparently it's quite impossible, isn't it?
It's quite impossible, right? To like create a stable country, but at the same time banning, right? Banning certain information to get to our citizen. Then this will be the agenda of not only Indonesia but perhaps China. There are even more restricted social media, which is even more a problem to their citizen. Their citizen cannot find the fact. Well, government creates their own social media in China. They provide them with this is the social media allowed in our country. They give an alternative, despite the fact that they banned this website. They give an other alternative. I think this is a good thing, but again, they could not access Western values. They cannot receive Western values and alternatives and other information from Western countries, because government of China already decided on what they could find out and what they could not find out.
Okay. Do you think like these countries who have limited access to social media or the mass media, because of the flow of information is restricted, should get their ideology straight, because like this banning is caused by their ideology. Do you think they should make it the same for their ideology in terms of media freedom? Do you think it's possible?
Well, I think right. It's actually influenced by their own ideology. Again, that's why it's very difficult to create freedom of expression and freedom in media if a country themselves having an ideology which is contradicts with this all the things that freedom related to. Therefore, again, and you also actually reminded me of something when you say that people are sometimes restricted because of their government. Well, there are other things that restricted someone to gain access to internet and information, such as levels of wealth. Well, when people are poor, they of course cannot access the internet. They cannot have mobile phones to access the widespread of information that we have today. So again, the factor is not only government, but there are other things as well. Access to internet, such as economy, influence the citizen. But again, government should work on that, should work on this economy to create a
make
better
it
life. Yeah, of
equal.
course, and of course for sharing of information.
Okay. Any other thing do you see which is the problem in this, like the bias? Any problem, like small problems, do you see?
Well, for the biased media and mass media, again, I think the factors is only media owners or the media themselves in nature, which is business, and perhaps other actors that are supported by the media. These are the major factors that influence the bias in media.
Okay, thank you so much, Kartika. And we're going to be back to Face to Face, so stay tuned on Face to Face to talk more about media. Thank viewers, and welcome back to Face to Face. And now we are in the last segment. And hi, Kartika, welcome back again. It's like,
Yes.
okay. So, what is your expectation towards Indonesian media from what we've talked about? Those bias, those ideology, how people perceive it. What is your expectation?
Well, my expectation for media companies in Indonesia is that I hope that they can hold on to the principle of neutrality and objectivity. And even if I was a policymaker in Indonesia, I would really suggest that media owners should not be political actors. Therefore, they can stay on track to these neutrality and objectivity. And I would always suggest that media owners should hold on to these to this principle, because once the media owners are not holding on to these principles, when they have certain agenda that they would like to achieve, then this will influence the journalists and reporters below them, because they would go on to the perspective of the media owners, right? Therefore, again, neutrality and objectivity, I know that this is almost impossible. Pure objectivity and neutrality is almost impossible in media, but
So
still, they would have to make a principle in which they would have to tell the truth to the citizens. Citizens need to tell the truth. But again, I would like to advise on the audience and of course citizen in Indonesia to be critical when it comes to seeing the media propaganda, because sometimes media can have their own flaws despite the fact that they did a good job in educating us.
Okay, that's really good. And how about, do you have something more for the young generation, especially teenagers, let's say? How should they perceive the mass media, especially young generation?
For young generation, I suggest them to watch not only one television channels but a lot of television channels, and perhaps they can also watch news from abroad. You can say many television channel from abroad. It is actually to widen their perspective. We cannot see an events only from a certain media companies. You have to look further. You have to look in a broader perspective. And of course, for young generation, it's important to stay critical, not only to mass media but also to social media. You have to keep in mind that when you post something in social media, it will become viral. Therefore, we have to set our own principle about things that should or should not be posted in social media. You know, we have our own values in Indonesia. And perhaps if they not go in line with these values, you have to be careful, because Indonesian government already have ITE policy in which they could charge people who disregard this policy. Therefore, you have to be very careful in social media when it comes to posting something. You can probably just disregard someone, and that person would be felt hurt and something like that, and they could just like go to the government and sue you. Therefore, it's very dangerous.
How about we have this technology like VPN that provides you any anonymity, and how's that? People become anonymous there.
Although the people become anonymous, but still, when you post something, an information that is irrelevant or inappropriate, it will not give good impacts towards yourself, right? It will give negative impacts towards you, and of course, people who saw that. It can create fight between one another, even the family and friends. Therefore, even though we have anonymity, again, you still have to stick with the principle about what should or should not be posted in social media.
Okay, that's really good. So, guys, we have seen that media has a lot of factors in our life. It gives us a good flow of information, but again, the media approach sometimes go in line with the government. Government can affect it, and it can cause bias. So as we see just now, we have to be critical, see from a lot of perspective, and when we become critical about it, we can get this information that we want. Country stability and neutrality might not come in line, because it's quite impossible, because as government try to give you the sense of freedom in media, but again, they have to give you the sense of stability in our country. So we have to be smart in achieving this, that we become this critical. So stay tuned on Face to Face to get more information about great ideas. See you on the next Face to Face.